my name is Dave Mathias. Like I say, I used to live in Minnesota, was very involved in the product analytics community up there, and heard a couple voices that sounded familiar. Like I say, down in Nashville now, but like throughout my career, I like I say, I still consider myself a recovering attorney. So I moved into product from being an attorney, but when I moved into product, it was always very heavy analytics type products. And so because of that, certainly when generative AI came about, and obviously, generative AI has not been around that long, at least things that the public can use. And so the last couple years have been, ever since things started coming out, started getting involved in it. And I'm going to start out by talking a little bit, like it's titled like Be a 10X Product Manager. But I think this is sort of like be a 10X anybody in what you're doing and thinking about how you can use this in your job, in your life. But also like as a product manager, also like how you can think about like leveraging it in your products themselves too as differentiation points. And I'll just go through a use case, something we did last year when sort of what I guess was ChatGPT 4, was it ChatGPT 4 last year? Yeah, like early in spring. And then we had our first alpha out, I think it was May or June last year, leveraging that. So with that being said, so why now? I mean, certainly, as a product manager, I think one of the things especially if you're a good product manager, just like you're a good developer or good anything, you sort of, even though you might be good, sometimes you just learn how to do things and you're used to navigating things. And I think generative AI for a lot of people just is different than what they would normally do. And it's not that different as soon as you start getting into the habit of things and how you use it, but just getting into the practice of being sort of your aid in a variety of things and just testing and experimenting. The good thing with product folks is curious, whether you're in product or analytics, you're probably a pretty curious person. So the good thing is you're probably wanting to try new things. And so for me, one of the things I tried to try a lot of is not just different models, because I certainly do that, but also just different applications and how am I using generative AI every day in some form or another, and in different platforms even. And I'll go through some of those, like I say, throughout today. So some of the things that I'm going to just go through a little bit today, but like I say, there's so many different scenarios you can use generative AI in product is, of course, writing. I think writing and editing your writing are really great ways. Summarizing information is another extremely good way. It's great at summarizing information, taking long documents. You get a contract and you need to like take a look at it to look for unusual terms when you're doing a first pass of something. Certainly it's not with the idea that, we know that things can hallucinate. We know that these models can hallucinate. They can also, miss things. It's not going to be perfect, but again, humans are too. So the question is, depending on the situation, the risk, is it a good use of the technology? And the more you use it, the better you'll get at that. Information analysis, another good thing. There's a variety of ways from an information analysis standpoint. In fact, like one of the things we're looking at trying to do a little bit more of in our own organization is just how do we help our customers just use that, Gen AI to learn information about their data and do it in sort of like even a proactive manner. Just thinking about, based on what we're seeing and then allowing that interaction. So my head of data science and myself were just chatting on this yesterday about some things we're thinking about doing in this area and, during the rest of the year. So rapid prototyping is another area. Certainly, I think this area is going to actually develop a lot more, I think, but I really see some really cool opportunities in the rapid prototyping space. And we're just touching the surface. I'm hoping some other companies that are in the space of doing things, the Figmas and the others of the world keep on upping their game and like leveraging these things better, that they can do some pretty cool stuff. And there's other like no code or low code type of applications that are out there. If you have used some of those, I think those are good to at least understand too, because I think the combination of Gen AI with some of these other tools will allow a lot of good, like how do you get something that's really a good testable product in front of folks, especially if in the software space, obviously we're talking about. But even thinking about people are using generative AI to run experiments in the background, like even chemical, biological, and other things, experiments, thinking about things from a generative AI standpoint. So I do think there's some pretty cool stuff ahead there that's just touching the surface. Okay, so with that being said, content creation, I think Gen AI, whatever ones you want to from a Gen AI standpoint, whatever your preference is, I think they're all getting a lot better. Generally, at content creation, yes, some of them have gone off a little bit on some of the images. There's been some news lately on some of that stuff. But like, I think an interesting thing, and I think I originally had this as a Google Docs one. You can go into Google Docs and do this. Let's just go into a couple spots to try this area. So if I go into Google Docs nowadays, you'll see a help me write type of thing. And so when I go this, so if I write a prompt like this, and it might be a place where it gives you some ideas from a starting point, right? So, you're needing to write a blog post, you got a new product coming out, or you're trying to create some ideas. It's a good first thing of just getting something on paper. So I like this, using Google Docs, actually has been fairly decent from a first iteration. It's not always good, or like when you tell it 700 to, I think I said 1,500 words, it oftentimes will do less, just because I think they sort of that's one is they struggle with sometimes with numbers on this, but they also, I think, are trying to nerf what usage. I think there's some other tools that do a little bit better on that. I've been playing recently with Claude 3, trying to see if it's any better. I haven't seen actually that much improvement yet on like this type of problem with Claude 3 though. So but another thing to think about when you're thinking about Gen AI is that you have a lot of tools. One of the ones I subscribe to is you.com, you.com. And it's a relatively affordable for an annual membership for this one. I think it's 100, 150, something like that a year. But the nice thing about this, making sure I'm actually logged in, is I don't see something that I normally see. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so they have different modes here. So the nice thing about like more of these are understanding that there's different ways that people are looking to look at or start things and approach a problem. So like this one has like a research mode where it gives a ton of citations around the item that you might be researching around. So the nice thing about it is when you start looking at like, so I work for a company called Shipwell and Product, and we are in the transportation management software space. So trucks, like tracking, like booking, tracking, doing settlement around freight. So trucks and ocean containers and things like that. So that's what our software is around. And we mainly sell to like shippers, like, grocery stores or other types of companies like that. Okay. So if I wanted to say like, what are the trends in transportation management software 2024? Let's see what it says for that in research mode. So it's going to do a few different searches, and this is a good way, especially like the other day I was trying to look at some competitors' API, like how they're doing different things in their with trying to look at from their API, like because we're thinking about doing something, and we're trying to understand how our competitors have done this to understand is there consistency across this approach or not, something like that. So here you can see like a lot of these, you'll see links after nearly every sentence where you can go and have access to that information. So like say you.com, but I think more of these systems are starting to understand there's just sort of different modes that you're trying to do different approaches to in what you're trying to get for information. So like I say, writing, editing, content creation, certainly images, like we all know that the fancy images, some cool stuff. And you just have to be careful. Like if you're doing anything content creation, it should be thought of as a starter, and you're using it as, brainstorming. You should be changing a lot. You should also be running things just from a safety perspective through like whether it's Grammarly or other types of services that have like plagiarism detectors, just to make sure you don't accidentally, plagiarize stuff because you kept a couple sentences in that were good and they were, they're like, oh, that's how I'd say that. But it's good to still run that. So summarization is another good thing. Like talk about, there's a lot of ways from a summarization standpoint. So what I'm going to do here from a summarization standpoint is I'm going to go into, actually, let's go into Claude 3 here and say, I'm going to upload downloads. I have a sample customer feedback. A lease document. Okay. So this is a lease contract that we just signed the lease. We were like in Nashville. We were just moving to a new place. It was like a 40-some page contract. So like, tell me about any unusual terms that are not ordinary for this lease in Nashville, Tennessee, that I should be aware of. And so, whoops. And so when you do that, like one of the things from a prompting standpoint, one of the things you're always trying to, give it a context is, and they're getting better starting out of the gate with more of this, I do think, but, giving context of who you are as an audience member. So the more that you can provide that context. So this is just running against that. It's going to be searching against that document and summarizing it up. I haven't actually tried this one with Cloud 3, so it says, okay, contractual lien. Let's see here. So there's some deductible, insurance deductible liability, convergent building fee, no notice required for rent non-payment. So that gives me a few things that I may look at, and it tells me where those sections are. And I actually ran this lease against a few different of the services out there to see how good different ones were. At the time, Cloud 3, I don't think was out because it was about a month ago we moved in here. So, but yeah, some of these do better than others. Yes.
Can you make the wording a little bit bigger by chance?
Yes.
Can you do
Let's
like
go
a
there.
Control plus or something?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you for letting me know. So here, how's that look?
Right, a little bit more.
Okay, let's see here. Is that better?
No,
It's not changing.
It's not changing, huh? Why is it not with Control Plus? I wonder if I had to do a zoom with Zoom, because I'm doing Control Plus and it's getting really big on my side where it's like let me see here if is that getting, no, that, okay, let's, technical difficulties as we know. Let's see here, zoom this way. Because it seemed like, how's that look?
there, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, Control Plus was blowing it all up across the whole screen. So that's weird. Like Zoom was, yeah. But okay. So you can see this lease doc. It says, a few different things, and it references the sections to look at. So, again, a quick way, a 44-page lease doc, which I thought was just ridiculous. Like we have a house still in Minnesota, but we're renting out. I think ours is like whatever, the 4 or 5 standard page thing. I was like, 45 pages or it's like, this is too much to like read in detail at once. And so I ran it through a few of these, and this is me as a former attorney, right? So, okay. So that's another good way, but like using this for like, competitor intel, running things through, right? Summarize your competitor releases something, it's a good thing to, run those through. Now, certainly certain things you want to read through in detail, but certain times you just don't have enough time as a product person, right? You have a lot of things on your plate. And so leveraging for summarization is something I use quite a bit. Okay, continuing on from some different approaches here is, well, and actually another summarization we're going to do is, or actually, wait a second, we're going to do in this next one, information analysis. One of the things, and so I had switched computers recently. This is my personal computer. So I just switched this computer. And one of the things I had noticed, or I had done before, but I was like, I forgot that I had on my other computer. And so it didn't have here, was like generating fake data. One thing I like to use it for is like, if you ever need, because like oftentimes you don't want to be using actual customer data, right? If you have software, you're doing things like that, but you want to generate custom data, customer or example data is using generative AI to just go and do that. So another good thing. So before this, I just sort of said, hey, give me 150 sample customer feedback data points for transportation management software, including mix of good, medium, and negative feedback, with each entry being 1 to 3 sentences in length. So it like gave me a file. I then put that, it translated into here you can see like the feedback there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that. And so I did that in Poe under the that model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a different model. I'm going to go still in Poe, but there's also a lot of good open source stuff out there. And so Minstrel, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong all of a sudden. Minstrel has some good, oh, there's my, I need to just make it smaller so I can find it. New chat. Okay, so I'm looking for my but the Mistral medium model is one that I think does pretty well, and it's an open source model, so you can of course use that for free. Download it. So it's also commercially available for free usage. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the sample customer feedback, and I'm going to say summarize this customer feedback with positive, positive feedback. I'm going to say between top 5 customer or positive customer feedback is what I meant. And top 5 negative customer feedback responses. And I'm going to try to spell a little better. Okay. And of course, I'm saying top 5, and you might not want to do that because then you're already putting limits on the model when you do that. So let's see what it comes up with. I'm going to make my screen bigger as it's thinking. Hopefully it is going. Come on. I try it. Is it running? Shouldn't be. Oh, it doesn't. What support? Oh, wait a sec. Spreadsheets. Oh, that one doesn't. Oh, maybe I was. Oh, yeah, it was CSV is what Minstrel supports. They don't support. I'm going to save as a CSV quick. Save as CSV. Okay. And I will try that again. So. Grab that and give that another go. Oh, I've done that before with CSV, I thought with Mistral, but I could be mistaken. It's one of the others. So let's just go with, let's go to u.com and do that and just go in the genius mode and say that and upload. Here we go. See what that says. Although I like say I do use Mistral a lot for things and definitely recommend it. We're considering it for something we're working on at Shipwell as a model. Has anyone used Mistral in anything they've been doing? They're actually in using it for something in like production type format.
Nobody's responding.
No one's responding. Okay. Well, this is thinking and programming. It's saying so. You know, we'll let it go. And I know I wasn't able to really easily show just because the screen size some of the other things, but there's also, I don't know if you've with LM Studio, which is a place where if you have a decent enough computer, you can you can download even some of these models. And like a Mistral, which is not a huge model, is one that you could even run locally if you wanted. So with something like LM Studio, and you can download different models and play with them locally if you're of that type that finds that of interest. So it's a free product to use. So this is taking a little bit long. Oh, here it is. Okay, now it's coming up. Okay, the top 5. Okay. Streamlined, saved us time, highly recommend, software's adequate, but adequate is apparently a top 5 customer feedback, not great. Let's see what
Dave,
else. Hello?
It's
Oh,
really
yeah, I'm gonna
small.
make bigger. Yeah, yep, make bigger. Thank you. There you go. So the software, and let me see, I'll make it a little bit bigger even. How's that?
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the software has streamlined our operations, saved us countless hours. That sounds like positive feedback indeed. The next one, it says the software is adequate, which I wouldn't say is that's your most positive feedback. That's not great. But the reporting features could be more robust. So I'd question like how it did there from a classification standpoint for positive. Has consistently met our needs. The software is powerful. Again, integration with our existing systems. While our software has some useful features, these are the negative. We've encountered several bugs, or the interface is intuitive. But this, of course, this one I would flip around and exchange out with that number 2 up above. So it's sort of interesting how it didn't classify that greatly. But again, like it's a quick way, and there's other ways to rate, like sentiment analysis. There's tons of things out there that you don't need to use LMs for typical sentiment analysis. Oftentimes, there's other tools you might have. But again, if you're a product manager, you're looking for something quick, you got a bunch of data that's in, and you want to quickly summarize it. It's a good way to at least get a starting point to leverage. Again, of course, like depending on what you're able to share or not share with these different cloud providers, just be aware of that, because certainly different companies have different restrictions on that. Okay, so again, that's something that I'd recommend experimenting more on, either creating sample data or else actually going in and analyzing the data. Now, so like the math is still not great. Like it's getting better in analyzing what I've been experiencing, where it's starting to like break down problems better and things like that. And it'll be interesting to see with some of the models that are coming out this year, how much it gets better, because that's something they've been getting more harder time for. But certainly, I think information analysis is an area that as PMs we're doing that a lot. So it's a valuable thing to at least get used to with LMs, because it's going to be more and more the place to go. Rapid prototyping. So I think rapid prototyping is a place where it's just in sort of the initial foray, and like I think some opportunities around here. But I would encourage you to try out something like Make Real TL Draw. So what Make Real, you have to put in your own API key to actually. So you'd have to get like an OpenAI API key to actually leverage this to create your own. You can click on this link. I think this will still pop up, but like to generate from a image. So what this is really doing, let's see if it's still alive. Yes, it is. Okay, there it is. So this is like a little like Pong game that was created just from a drawing. So what this is, you can see that's moving. It's actually in a window website or like a browser. So but really all I did was go to, they have basically same thing as a mural or like a canvas like that, right? And with like shapes, and you can like put in some text, and you can draw lines, you can copy images into it. You can of course make it more complex with like, hey, like we want to do this kind of thing like Slack does here, or some other one company does there. And so you might give it as things. And so between the text and the image that's drawing, it comes about, and like I say, it creates this where you could like embed it in something, get user feedback, like, hey, how does this look? This is something what I was thinking, again, I think there's going to be opportunities to really expand out like this type of capability. But what I think is interesting is when you look at the prompt behind this, so what this is doing is translating into something that's feeding into ChatGPT. And so it says you're an expert web developer who specializes in Tailwind CSS. Your user will provide you with a low fidelity wireframe of an application. You return a single HTML file that uses HTML Tailwind, so you can of course think about like, hey, how would I do something like this in a different way? I might modify this because I do it differently. But so you can, I'm not going to read the whole prompt here, but it's in here. But you can also read the whole TL Draw story right here, this Substack article. But I encourage you to like, take a look at it, give it a try. But I do think like things like Figma and other places, like for example, Figma is what we use from our design. A lot of companies use for design. But we have all of our component styles in there, right? We have all of our colors, our textual formats, all of our things there. So it's got our library of stuff, right? And so it seems pretty easy if you're able to combine this with what you have already to really start doing some rapid prototyping in a much easier format to get things just to even to try it out. I'm not saying like this is like what you're going to use and just throw into your application and it works for how you're intending it. But again, like how do you get something that you can get feedback on, especially in the software space, more quickly? So I'm really excited about where this will go and where the vendors are going to go leveraging this technology. Has anyone seen anything cool from any vendors that they think is worth talking about on a rapid prototyping standpoint, especially like, well, we're talking more software here, but any tools that they've seen that want to share with the group?
I am not seeing any hands. Anybody?
Okay. Well, I'm trying to do participation even though I'm remote. But yeah, so take a look at TL Draw. Hey, if you got a kid, it'd be a fun thing too. You put $10 on it. This is like, I think for each of the things to generate it, like that was like maybe 2 cents or like I forgot like exactly how much it is. It's a de minimis type of cost. So you put $10 on, you have some fun with kids or just, who knows what, if you're an adult, and you're nerd out on this stuff, you're like a kid with this stuff too. So, okay, so talking about like actually taking this generative AI and thinking about how to embed it into a product or maybe create a product leveraging it specifically. So I'm just going to talk a little high level about a case that we did last year. We called it our Swifty Logistics Assistant. In fact, we're just updating our website. We have a new website that's coming out in later next week or week after us. And we have a whole section related to Swifty AI just in that too. But really, when you think about for us, what we like say, so our customers are booking freight. They are they're watching it go across the country, making sure it comes there on time, things like that, right? Because these are big trucks. They need people to unload it, and they have customers that are waiting for it, and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, they're needing to pay for that freight. So that's like fundamentally when you think about our business, like the main stuff why people buy our software. But one of the things, since we're selling, like our main users are logistics teams or obviously finance teams for the settlement type of stuff. But when you think about that, there was just a lot of things that we'd hear, just sort of like people spending a lot of manual time. You have small logistics teams that are already stretched and they're looking to save time. So we had the premise that there's, one, we wanted to like find a way that we could learn and grow ourselves leveraging generative AI and of course get a little marketing out of it and all that kind of stuff that you like to do too. But at the same time, we wanted to just better say, hey, can we get something quicker for our customers? Some of these painful use cases that we hear about on one-off, but like let's take an effort around this. And so we did first a survey, we did some follow-up interviews, typical user research, and we're just trying to understand where people are spending their time, or the folks that interact with our product outside of our product. And what things were they doing repetitively that was just eating up a lot of their week, either themselves or others on their team. And so from that, we broke it down into a few sort of like ranked the different use cases that we heard on where people were spending their time and the pain points. And then we broke it down into say, okay, well, let's tackle first, like the first use, there was two that were sort of stood out right away that we felt were fairly confident. One, we felt very, very confident to do really quickly. The second one, we felt fairly confident to do quickly. And so we're like, okay, let's do that. Now we had the benefit because we have a API first platform. You go to like docs.shipwell.com, you see all of our APIs. And so it's, from an integration standpoint, that makes it much easier, events, webhooks, et cetera, our architecture. Because of that, like we went from just sort of idea to do this to actually having alpha customers using it on a daily basis in about 2 months. And so a pretty quick turnaround. And that was us even like we pushed a little bit because we were just stretched. We were originally going to do it in like a month, but like honestly, we just had so many other things that we were focused on too, that this is all sort of a side project for all of us that we're working. There was like 5 of us that sort of between the developers and myself and our data science person, that we sort of just said like, okay, we only had so much time because it's our nights and weekends project at first. And so, but from that, we actually got a lot of good feedback, a lot of initial users. And then we, of course, then we're like, okay, like this has got some legs and let's get some more customers on it, some more use cases, and keep on adding to that. And the nice thing about something like leveraging generative AI and why it worked well for us is when you think about the use cases at first that we did were very simple things like, where is my stuff, right? Like people are trying to understand where their stuff is, but not everybody wants to log into a website, enter in a shipment ID and like go to a map and like understand or like find out the ETA, especially folks that are not used to using the software in a day-to-day basis. So they'd have customer support people that would always like be asking them in Microsoft Teams or Slack or email or just calling them on the phone. And now they can say, okay, I'm just going to set up a forwarding email, or I'm going to set up a Microsoft Teams bot that, because we did this and partly also cross-platform. So we supported email, Teams and Slack initially. And we have some others that we're thinking about, but those are the three right now. And so, knowing that, hey, that now you have a 24/7 assistant that can respond to these type of queries that they were getting a lot. And even a couple of our customers are using it for their external customers. So it's not even people within their company, but it's people outside their company, but they first send it into that company that then goes to us, and then they get the response right away. So it makes it much quicker response time for those folks, which they liked. But then also thinking about more complex use cases, we were able to leverage other things we've done. So we had done some different things around document classification and sort of like decoding different information on documents already. So we already had done this as part of our doing a lot around settlement. And so as part of that, we were able to re-leverage some of that and sort of go that next step of saying, okay, well, generative AI can leverage our APIs, use the queries, look at the different data that comes in, decodes it and figures out, hey, this data, these sets of documents likely go on this shipment. And then instead of the current use case that people would get is they'd get an email, they'd have to download the email into a document, or they download the attachments, and it's one or multiple attachments that are there. They'd have to log into Shipwell, and then they'd have to find the shipment and then upload the documents. Now they don't even need to be involved at all, and they can just have their end users send that to a central email where they get all those document request or input requests anyway. So again, just thinking about just like anything with product, how do you save your customers pain or or else increase money for your clients, which is one of two things you're always sort of looking for. And so when we looked at Swifty, that's really our focus, is just traditional, hey, where's the pain? Where do we think generative AI we can use to solve those initial pain points? And we have some other things that we think we can do that we're looking at for use cases, but we also know that certain things are still more complex than we feel comfortable, where it's it's not performing at a good enough level. So we're going to hold off on that. And maybe as models increase, or we figure out a better way to prompt something, or we have something else we're supporting in our normal engineering that may allow for that. So any questions on that from a use case, or any use cases that people want to share of what they've used generative AI for at their work or life?
Anybody? Don't be shy. Everybody's being shy, Dave.
Everyone's being shy. It's Friday. Everyone should
I
be
don't know what's
happy.
going
Come on. It's getting warmer in Minnesota. I don't know how warm it is today. I should have looked beforehand. Is it warm today, by the way,
Oh,
Minnesota?
wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share a little bit on that side, that some of the things they are working on. Use cases. For developer portals, there's a lot of architecture, wiki pages, or just developer in general, best practices. So, or fund contribution from developer to the stack. So we ingest those information into through the RAG process models, and then we providing that interaction to the QA systems, and we're providing more customized responses to what they're looking for. That actually do that more keyword search. That's kind of some of the things we find is very beneficial, provide a lot of more meaningful responses to them and
Cool. Dave, we have one other. Go ahead.
So at Blue Cross Blue Shield Minnesota, we are becoming a chatbot, generative AI chatbot. It's showing the plot on using the plot and llama model, and this chatbot provides answers to the customer service representative related to your use case. We have got lots of documents related to policies, and also knowledge bases that exist in the various pages, and things like that. So this chatbot brings information, and we are using RAG method to generate answers from that one.
Anybody else? All right, Dave, back to you.
Yeah, thanks for both sharing that. Yeah, I think there's yeah, and like I say, it's the good thing with this is it's usually like we were able to do this initially with the nights and weekends type thing. Certainly, the more complex you get, the more intensive it gets. But it is one of those things, finding an opportunity where you might use it as a learning opportunity, and maybe it won't be a home run type of product, but it will help you learn in your organization, maybe get a little marketing out of it, and also hopefully add customer value, whatever your product is. If you're assuming you're in the software space, it's obviously easier there for this type of item, but definitely encourage you to look for opportunities where this might make sense. And so one of the things I just sort of wanted to break down some like generative AI tools by type, and there's a lot of things I could like make a really long list, but I thought like, when you think of text, image, code, audio, video, there's a lot of different tools out there. Encourage you to try these. These have all links to them if you're interested in learning more about them. I do find it interesting. Like I think like the Pika stuff that you might have, I don't know if you're on like X or those Twitter or other social media. I don't know how much like I'm not on social media that much, but every so often get on X or LinkedIn, and I saw for a bit like the Pika videos were coming up a lot, and really they do a lot of sort of like cool animation, like the sound and the very vivid graphics. It looks almost like a movie-esque type of quality. But I think they also were the ones who did actually, I'm trying to remember if it was Pika or not. I could be mistaken. There was a company that did one around South Park, and this is like 8 or 9 months ago, maybe. And if you go on YouTube and you look for like sort of South Park AI episode or something like that, it should come up on YouTube. And they'll go into a little bit about it, but then they'll also go into the shows the episode, and it was sort of like the text was the lines were generated, the image was generated, the audio was generated. It's certainly not a perfect South Park episode by any means, but it's still kind of cool when you think of like bringing all those things together from a fairly not overly complex sort of prompt. Certainly there's other work that they've done to get it, and you have a ton of different data because you have all these episodes, so it's a use case that's obviously unique to like a case like that, but it still is pretty impressive when you start thinking about it. I think about like I used to be an old Seinfeld fan, where I'm still like, hey, it'd be great to have like new Seinfeld episodes. So like if you could go use this technology to do that. And another one, like I don't know if there was the speech by what is it, Malay, the Argentinian president that got elected at the end of last year, and he was at the the Swiss I forgot starts with a D, whatever that conference is. But HeyGen was the voiceover, because it sounded like in English if you listen to that talk that he had given. It was all sort of HeyGen had done it, taken from his Spanish into, and it looked like he was just talking in English normally. Like the realism there was pretty cool. So again, just thinking of like all these cool applications in different ways. And of course, if you're a person who likes to code, and I do think the nice thing is you can have product folks doing a little bit of more coding from the idea of like, hey, I want to shortcut do something, versus not being your professional. This is going into the code base for hopefully, but also at the same time, like, hey, I'm trying to do this and this. Is there a way to sort of do some code around that? Or yeah, so certainly I think the coding is something if you like to dabble in, or obviously if you're a person that does professionally code, then definitely encourage you. It was interesting because I've been trying to like lately start asking questions at my organization of just like, hey, like who's using GitHub Copilot, and like are we like just thinking about like how can we get better with, because Copilot's probably the one that's most known from a code perspective, but your GitHub Copilot how do you get better at your coding? How do you just like get better code overall as a group? How do we get more code? All those types of things that we're trying to do as a startup, be more efficient. So definitely encourage you to take a look at some of these, test some of these out, but also like other ways to learn and grow. So like say, download the apps. There's a lot of these have apps on the phone like Poe or ChatGPT or U.com, or like these different things that they actually have phone apps. But also like just setting defaults on your browser, and when it opens up, like what things do you have it open to, so that you're just always sort of constantly remembering to like, hey, yeah, I should be using this. What am I, I have this when it's open, it's just easier that you do that. And then This Week in Startups, they do a good, like, it's generally Monday, sometimes it's different days, but like an AI review episode. So there's a guest that joins the main host, Jason Calcanis, that joins somebody, Sonny, I forgot his last name, joins him, and they do a really good job of a lot of the different things that are out there nowadays. So it's on YouTube, but it's also like an audio version. Obviously, YouTube is nice because you get the ability to actually see if they're doing screen shares, which they oftentimes do. Voice Spot's another good one for podcasts or YouTube. And then, of course, Applied AI Meetup, mini analytics, I'm sure many of you know about. But then I think like AI for Everyone, I still think is a really good online course. And I think this is actually a Nashville Vanderbilt professor, but he has this popular Coursera course, Prompt Engineering with ChatGPT, and now he's had a few more on Coursera that I think are just good ones and for product folks too. So I'd definitely recommend you do that. I have done a few articles on my website, gobeyondthedata.com, and you can click on those links to get to those if you're interested. And then any questions? Yeah, I also had a book that came out last year on data storytelling translation. I got to say it at least. And then you can access the presentation here with that link. What questions do you have? Anything that I can answer?
I have another one, and it's called AI Salon, and you can go to it online. They actually have a website, and they do every Tuesday night. You can join them. There's a session. You're exploring something new. It's a whole community that exists to ask questions in or explore with. Again, it's called AI Salon.
Was that a question? Sorry, I couldn't hear just with the audio, but
AI Salon, did you hear? She was talking about a community in AI Salon. Are you
Okay.
familiar with that?
Salon is a beauty salon?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Was there a particular question that you had on
No,
that?
I was just sharing.
Okay, so she just wanted to share that. Okay, go ahead.
Cool.
Question?
Could you zoom in on that?
sorry, I couldn't.
The QR code? They
Oh,
want
yeah.
the QR code a little
Yeah,
bit bigger.
yeah. Let me zoom here. Oops.
Other way.
It's going the other way. What? I'm going
Yeah,
bigger.
we went bigger.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird how I'm like literally choosing, and it was going to 175, and then it went like here. Apparently, I have to go to 25%, and then it's bigger. This is weird. Is that work? Let's see if there's any other way that.
There's a lot of phones up that are trying to grab the QR code.
Let me see if I can make it bigger this way. And like I say, feel free to reach out to me online. And while I'm not in the cities, I'm hoping to attend the Applied AI conference in May. If I'm not there in May, I'll be in town in June. So it's either May or June that I'll be back in town. So, I usually come for a week or two in town when it's actually nice, when I'm like, okay, I'm confident it's gonna be nice in the year. So be back then, but we can always grab a virtual coffee if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or email, either way probably works. And I will send you a virtual coffee link if you're interested.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation. One question I have related to the text to video. I kind of feel skill we are in the early stage. Text, GPTs are providing, the good models are providing, but what's your thought in that area? And then other things like from OpenAI, you have seen the Sora is coming, but right now, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think what I heard, I think you're asking about text to video specifically, right? And the different things out there.
Text to video.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's an interesting area. I mean, because it sort of depends what you're using it as. So like one of the things we've been looking at is, so we have a lot of documentation we want to do, right? And so like we have like if you go to here, docs.shipwell.com is and so like you'll go in here, and so for example, like we have these videos. We've been trying to do some of these videos, and this is actually actually the first time, like because we were looking at like, oh, is there sort of like a virtual, like, can we do this in a quick way, or is this something where we're just doing one-off jobs that we keep on having to hire somebody to like constantly update? So we're trying to explore that area ourselves. Right now, this is we have a person that we've tested a few of these with to see. But we're also just trying to say of like, hey, from a startup trying to be more nimble, and this is just a small, because like this is our API docs, but then we obviously have our, like, in the software itself and our mobile app and other things like that. Like, how can we have really good quality of video, and what are the opportunities to do that? And we've been just starting to explore that, so I'd be open to if anyone has any strong recommendations, because so far I think they've like, Hey Jen's been pretty interesting. I think it's pretty interesting. I think that it gets a little pricey when you get to more, and I still feel like there's still a fair amount of work to do for that. But has anyone noticed anything that they're really wowed by on the text to video space? Like, actually from a, not just like a cool, like, hey, this is kind of cool, but like, hey, this is really useful.
The room is quiet, Dave.
Yeah, because I feel like
Okay.
the text to video is hey, it's kind of cool right now is where I feel it's at. I don't feel it's like that as super useful as I feel it will get. Just like I think the rapid prototyping space, I think right now is in the hey, this is cool, but like thinking about like, hey, is this something I have to use every day in my job, or like a core part of like what we're doing? I haven't seen anything yet myself. But it'll be. But I suspect these things are coming. You obviously see folks now investing more in that space. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. So any other questions?
Yeah, you said it'd be nice to have more Seinfeld episodes. Do you know Nothing Forever on Twitch? It's
Nothing
actually a
for,
bit,
actually, no, I don't. I'm gonna make a note of this, okay?
yeah, they're using AI to write scripts and actually do animation.
Oh, nice. I did not know that. So thank you very much. That's, hey, I will definitely look that up. Yeah, because I think like so many things like we like are things like oftentimes like whether it's music at a certain age, right? Like you have your favorite bands because at a certain age, those are like the things that were big, right? Or your TVs or movies or whatever it is, right? So allowing that sort of personalized, customized, like, hey, this is be really cool to have this, or like maybe mixing a couple things that you like. Yeah. Entertainment will definitely be different. I think in 5 years from now, we'll be seeing a lot of more of this. I mean, probably even sooner, but cool. Anything else?
You shared a menu of, yeah, you shared a menu of AI tools, and I was just wondering, is there each tool different purposes, right? Different strengths and weaknesses, but which one is exciting for you? Like, which one are you most excited about using, or maybe a top couple?
Yeah, no, that's good. So I probably like u.com. I really like because of it does a really good job linking a lot, and they lean in heavily. They're pretty much they're leveraging the Chat GPT family 3.5 and 4 for the most part. They're doing some stuff with beyond that or in addition to that, but generally I think that's where they're mainly leaning right now. Although and I like Poe a lot because Poe allows me to easily go across like Poe.com across models. Because like one of the things I just feel is that so early right now and these change so often. Like even things that I used to do and I like doing with ChatGPT, I feel like they've nerfed it so much on some cases that like things that work so well now don't. And so I get frustrated with that. And it's like, how can I easily try these things and something else? And it's like, oh wait, this works really well. And like I say, some of the things like I've been really surprised with Mistral in their smaller model, right? Their 8.7B model, I guess, or medium model, they consider that, but their 8.7B model has been fairly performant in a lot of like textual type of things that I've needed out of it. I'm trying to think of other ones that are worth. I mean, certainly Descript I've used a lot. I like Descript, but again, that's if you're audio wise. I've played around, like I am not a active developer. I learned programming many years ago, but I've never been a professional developer. And I like playing around and I use it for, hey, I got this task to do, so can we do this? So I like using some of the tools like that of like Copilot generally for that. And I've played it, like I say, with the TL draw, but again, for TL draw, I just don't think I see where it's a fun sort of like, this is a fun tool, but I don't think it's at that next level that I think that it's like, hey, we're going to use this all the time with my developers and product. We're going to, just use it on our daily basis type of thing. So, so that's where I feel like the tech stuff I use on a daily basis. Image stuff I don't. I use but whenever I need image type things, oftentimes I'm using that nowadays. So like, hey, I'm writing an article. I'm going to generate an image there, or so I use that, and it's probably in the order of text I use most, then image, and then some code, and then the audio. I used to use it more. I just don't need it as much nowadays. And video is probably the least out of the things that I use. So that's sort of also why I have it from left to right in that order. But yeah, u.com and po.com are probably the two things that I use the most. Although I'll be honest, like Microsoft Copilot with the app on the phone is pretty good. I like that too, and it's a nice way to get access to that right there too, in a pretty good way. And I need to, what I haven't signed up for, and I don't know who uses that in a good way, because it's on my list right now, and I just haven't done this yet, is Power Automate with Microsoft Copilot, like do the monthly Microsoft Copilot subscription, and then with Power Automate to leverage it, because our Power Automate's like their robotic process automation tool. And I was like, oh, there's some things that I think should work really well together that I want to try. I just haven't had the weekend or night to try that yet. So has anyone used Power Automate with Copilot yet, and has any input?
I am not seeing any hands. There's a
Okay.
couple more questions out there.
Okay, yeah,
though.
go for more questions. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna ask, Dave. Done any automating? And, we do writing and process and whatnot. Have you automated anything like emails, referral, back to your customers? You've done anything like that with any of these tools?
Sorry, I really couldn't hear that. Could someone repeat that?
Yeah, so she's wondering if, you've done like anything else, like email generating with the tools, and what else was it?
So the question is, did you automate anything? We've talked about writing and that you used it for like establishing processing and charts, but have you used it to automate anything or simplify something in your workflow?
Yeah,
did you hear
so Swifty itself, thank you for yeah, sorry, just because of the distance. Swifty, we did like certainly automate that, like the emails and things like that. Now we did have structure, right? So we did have we are leveraging it to automate data filling in some structure, and we obviously like we designed Swifty to be able to swap out different models, and so there's certain like sort of things that we did like architecturally to sort of designed like we wanted to be able to scale with this as with different use cases and different, not get stuck with one vendor. So, but so certainly that is a lot of automation was done with that, and automation for our customers with that. To be honest, on like I've debated on doing some like, hey, automated emailing or things like we have like here, I'll go to another thing we did from an automation standpoint is like this, like for Shipwell. So we built a bot, the typical type of thing, and it has a Gen AI leverage behind it, and can pull back certain code, like it understands our APIs and the documentation and things like that. And so we've done that kind of certainly from again trying to automate things. What I haven't done though in my personal life or anything like that, I've thought about like saying, hey, do I make my virtual me and just sort of like interact and like do things like that? Like that sounds good, but then I feel like I don't know, like doesn't feel the right thing to do. So still like when I will use it to like do a first draft of an email or things like that, like those types of things. But I don't like just like, hey, an email comes in, I'm going to have it look at it and automatically respond, trying to be me, like as like it's a question to me versus just like how we built like a product perspective. So I don't know if others have done anything interesting just to like automate something completely as a product manager. whether it's customer intake or like something with Jira or something else. Anyone can speak to anything that they might have done?
Room is,
The other one, for the automation standpoint, what we have done, we have the member letters that go for different scenarios, like, somebody is, let's say, coverage expired, or someone raised a concern about the medical policies, then we need to send responses. So we had in our application about like 500 different letters to the organization, and what they wanted is to differentiate different tones. So based on like, if it's a grievance or if it's a like ordinary letter, we could come up with different tones. So use ChatGPT there to derive the sentences, generated the sentences for 500 different letters. So then now we are using that ChatGPT generated sentences and
Thanks for sharing.
yes,
So I had a question, Dave, about prompting. So just, I feel like that's the creative part of like putting your ideas out there. And I spend a lot of time iterating around what the prompts are to get a better output. And it goes for both text, and then I've also explored a lot of images. And so I just wonder if you have some thoughts or ways that, like the prompting can get, it's just like producing what you want. Because sometimes I'll put in the prompt and I'm like, what? This is not what I asked for. And a lot of times, it's that iterative, like refining it. But I just wonder if you had some tips or just things that you found to be really successful.
Yeah, I mean, certainly what I've found successful, and sometimes it changes the success over time as these things change a little bit, but certainly one is just being really clear on what you're wanting it to do and separating out sort of thoughts. That's another thing. And then personas. So like, how do I want it to act as like, are you an expert, logistics, transportation person? Like, what is your role responding to me, and what is my role as the data or the response or person receiving the response, right? So like, okay, are you a product manager talking to product manager? Are you a product manager like acting as a product manager, like communicating to a CFO or like doing that? Because again, like the more you do that, and more it seems to really do a better job of understanding like what it matters for that. And then like say being very clear on what you're looking at. Although like say even being very clear, the challenge is like when you start saying, hey, I want like an 800 word this, if you're like writing, it doesn't do a great job on that. At the same time, what it does tend to do a good job is like, hey, give me like the top 5 things of this or the top 10 things. Like for example, we were doing some research earlier this week because we were doing some updates on charge codes like within our system and trying to figure out like, hey, what do we need to do to expand sort of the charge line items that are available to our users. So like how they break out different costs, right? And so we're trying to say like, because it's always like how much information, how many choices you give users versus, and giving them the right choices. So we're like, okay, this is a good place to use a generative AI to do research in this quickly to figure out like, hey, what's the right, some of the right sources, but also then what does this thing think? Like you're an expert, logistics mover for LTL freight, and I want you to provide the top 20 charge codes that you do in the order that you assign those. Things like that. Like when you're clear like that and you really give it that sort of context around it, it tends to do a good job, or at least tends to perform better. Not always a good job, to be honest. And like say, there's a little trust, but like always verify in this case with anything you're getting from generative AI. So it's also why I like the ones where they have more sourcing provided, just so you can quickly go in and verify that's true or not. So I did write, there's tons of articles out there. I hate even, whoops.
he's got a larger that. We can get links to it too, which is really
kind of takes you from prompting as a novice and right on through to what prompted. You know, as Dave said, there's some real good tricks about studying and creating an IGP that this profiling thing, it's like scary. Yeah. And you know, you said that to me.
One of the other things that we talked about last night was try asking it. I want to come up with and describe what it is you think you want. How would you ask for this? How can I ask you for this? Try doing something like that. Play with it for a bit. Because it may come back to you and like describe, ask me for, you know, exactly what you need. And then try feeding that in and see if it comes back.
Actually asking it for the prompt that I might need.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's a trick that's worked out really well, asking it for prompt. And I think where Michael is going to is asking it for the prompt, honing it down, and then using that as your chat, your own, so it always has it. So always knows. It's really great.
The other thing that we talked about was we can't put too many things in one prompt. It's like peeling an onion. So you have to ask an iterative question is the other thing that you kind of have to experiment with it. So you might get back something and then try just adding on a little bit more, but at some point you have to put in the original question or like this.
Smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Dave, one question I have is like, have you used LLMs to generate code? And what is your experience on that side?
Yes, I have. Sometimes I've tried a little too much and like I tell my developers like, hey, what about trying something like this? You have to be careful how much you do that as a product person because they start saying, okay, Dave, okay, yeah. So I have tried certainly tried some of that. And certainly used well, for me, like Python, I when I'm trying to script something to just like automate something like I don't know if you like, what is it, the book is Automate the Boring Stuff or whatever. There's a good book around leveraging Python for different automation. But certainly for me, oftentimes it's trying to grab something to like, hey, I'm trying to do something quick. How do I go do this? How do I identify, like one of the things I was trying to do, to be honest, like I was recently was trying to like see if there was if it could create a palletizer. So one of the things of like thinking about like how you stack different things together, right? Like a pallet, it goes on trucks, these pallets, and like you put in different boxes and different cartons. They all have different dimensions, different weights, and different ways that you stack. So it's a combination of things. And I kept on like, this is one that I sort of plugged away quite a bit on trying to get it to do better and trying different systems to try to do this. I'll be honest, I wasn't impressed with any of the end things. I mean, there's different like ways to like approximate this, but I wasn't like, and it was like, okay, but it wasn't great. Like the solution that I was ending up with. So I was like, okay, is that good enough? But yeah, so yes, I have used that. And like I say, like assuming that you're like, it actually, I think the code, how it does for coding is actually surprisingly good, especially when and like our developers that do use it very actively, because like on something like GitHub Copilot, right? It knows your code base, it knows how you do typically things, how different folks do things, like and so our developers that are using it, like have said really positive things of them using it just like every day and makes them much more efficient. So that's why I'm just trying to get others to do it. But that's from like professional developers versus myself. I tend to hack around to try to find, and I was like, okay, does this work or not? Like I get the code and I'm like, okay, I can read the code through. I'm like, okay, let me try, see if this works. And I'm like, well, but I want this. And then I usually also then have Excel because I have an idea of like a first like framework of like how I want things to go like mentally. And then I was like, okay, is this translating really in the code and like for my inputs and the outputs that I'd expect? So, like say, mixed experience, but I'm also saying like, I'm not a developer, but I'm a sort of semi-technical product manager.
So Dave, we're going to need to wrap up here
Yep,
so that we
sounds
have
good.
time to have Nam share, but this was great. I feel like we could keep going with this discussion all day, but thank you for a
Yes.
wonderful presentation.
Thank you. And good, hopefully we'll see folks at the Applied AI event or, thanks again, Justin and Emily and everyone for having me.